Rome, 897 AD. The church was no longer God's house, it was a den of monsters. And on this day, the most unholy trial in history was about to begin. With a corpse as the defendant, they dug him up, dressed him in rotting robes, propped his decaying body on a throne, and then they put him on trial. This is the story of the Pope who was executed after he was already dead. Rome, 897 AD. The air was thick with the stench of decay, not just from the rotting corpses in the catacombs, but from the corruption festering in the heart of the church itself. The papacy was no longer a holy institution. It was a battleground of power, vengeance, and unspeakable blasphemy. And in this pit of vipers, one man would commit an act so grotesque, so unthinkable, that history would remember it as the Cadaver Synod. Pope Stephen VI was a man consumed by rage. His predecessor, Pope Formosus, had been dead for months, his body buried beneath St. Peter's Basilica, his soul presumably judged by a higher power. But for Stephen, death was no escape. He wanted Formosus humiliated. He wanted him condemned. And so, in the spring of 897, he ordered the unthinkable. They dragged the corpse from its tomb, dressed it in the finery of the papacy, and sat it before a tribunal of terrified bishops. This was no metaphor, this was a real trial. And the defendant, a rotting corpse, Pope Stephen. Answer me, traitor. You who dared claim the throne of St. Peter while still Bishop of Porto. You who betrayed the Holy See. Deacon, defendant pleads, silence. But why? Why put a corpse on trial? The answer lies in the darkest depths of medieval politics, a web of betrayal, ambition, and pure, unadulterated spite. Formosus had been a controversial pope. He'd switched allegiances, crowned rival emperors, and, most damningly, appointed Stephen as a bishop while he himself was breaking church law. If Stephen could prove Formosus was never a real pope, then every decision Formosus ever made, including Stephen's own appointment, would be erased. It was a power play so twisted, so diabolical, that only a man teetering on madness could conceive it. Pope Stephen. Let the dead answer for his sins. The trial was a farce. The corpse couldn't speak, so a deacon was forced to defend it. The verdict, guilty of everything. The punishment, the ultimate disgrace. They stripped the corpse of its papal robes, severed the 3 blessing fingers from its right hand, and dragged it through the streets of Rome like common garbage. Then, they threw it into the Tiber River, a final insult to a man who could no longer defend himself. But the dead have a way of getting the last laugh. The people of Rome were horrified. This was no holy justice, this was sacrilege. A rebellion erupted. Pope Stephen VI was arrested by his own clergy, thrown into a dungeon, and strangled to death. The ultimate irony. His body was dumped into the same river where Formosus had been discarded. But the story doesn't end there. Years later, another pope exhumed Formosus again, this time to give him a proper burial. The church, desperate to erase the shame, declared the Cadaver Synod null and void. But history never forgets. And so the tale of the dead pope's trial remains, a dark testament to the lengths men will go for power, and the horrors that await when the dead are forced to answer for the sins of the living.